The late October sun glinted off the river, throwing shards of gold across the smooth surface of the Hudson. Autumn had arrived in New York with crisp wind and orange trees shedding into the currents below. And standing at the edge of the riverside promenade was a woman no one recognized. She wore jeans and a worn navy sweatshirt, her auburn hair tucked under a Yankees cap. She looked like any other early 30s New Yorker out for a walk. Not the billionaire tech mogul she truly was. Not the youngest woman ever to ring the opening bell at the Nussy. Not the CEO of a company valued at nearly $5 billion. Her name was Celeste Langston, or at least it was when she wore heels and sat in corner boardrooms. Today, though, she went by a name she hadn't used in a decade, Elle. And for the first time in what felt like years, she was breathing. Ella leaned on the steel railing and held up her phone to snap a picture of the sun bleeding into the skyline. A gentle reminder that there was more to life than boardrooms and quarterly reports. But then it happened. A sudden shove from behind. Not violent, just careless. A jogger with a too large backpack brushed her shoulder. "Oh, sorry," he called, already past her. But the damage was done. Celeste's phone flew from her hand, and the world tilted. Her foot caught on the raised edge of the sidewalk, and before she could even scream, splash. The water was a knife of ice. She gasped involuntarily, sucking in a mouthful of river. The cold punched into her lungs and paralyzed her arms. She flailed, panicked. Her head bobbed once, twice, her limbs too heavy from the shock. No one moved. People on the promenade screamed. Some pointed. A man shouted, "Someone call 911!" And then he jumped. From the edge of the railing, a tall figure dove clean into the water. One moment he was on land, the next slicing into the river like a missile. Strong arms wrapped around her waist beneath the water. A voice calm and firm spoke in her ear. "I've got you. Stop struggling." Celeste could barely keep her head above the surface, but she felt herself being pulled. Kicking weakly, she let the stranger do the work. His strokes were strong, deliberate, like a lifeguard's. Within moments, he guided her toward a rusted emergency ladder bolted to the wall. "Can you climb, you want to?" he asked. She nodded, coughing. Her hands shook violently as she gripped the metal rungs. The stranger steadied her from below, making sure she didn't fall. When she reached the top, she collapsed on her knees, gasping, soaked to the bone. The man climbed up behind her, water dripping from his clothes. He knelt beside her, his large hand gently touching her back. "You all right?" he asked. She turned to look at him. Dark skin, close-cropped hair, maybe late 30s. His flannel shirt clung to him like a second skin, waterlogged and cold. He had the kind of build that came from lifting real weight. Not dumbbells, but bricks and lumber. There was kindness in his eyes, but also concern. "I think so," she coughed. He nodded and pulled off the flannel shirt, leaving just a damp white t-shirt underneath. "You're shaking. Here, use this." "I don't even know your name," she whispered. Malik Jordan?" "Elle," she lied. "Elle Thompson." "Nice to meet you, Elle. Even if I did have to fish you out of the river to get here." For the first time, she smiled. Someone had called 911, but Malik didn't wait. "My truck's just over there. You need warmth now. Hypothermia can creep up fast." She hesitated. I don't usually go with strangers." He smirked. "I just risked my neck for you. I think we've crossed the stranger threshold." Despite the crowd, despite her shaking limbs, she followed him to a beat-up black Dodge Ram parked just beyond the promenade. He cranked the heat and handed her a towel and a hoodie from the back seat. "It's huge, but it's dry." She slipped into the hoodie, its collar smelling faintly of cedar and motor oil. It hung down to her knees, but the warmth was heaven. Malik turned his back to give her privacy. When he slid into the driver's seat, he handed her a thermos. "Hot tea, no sugar, sorry." "Are you always this prepared?" she asked, voice still trembling. "I'm a contractor. I keep gear in the truck. Never know when you'll need a warm layer or caffeine." "Thank you for everything," she murmured. He shrugged. Would have done it for anyone. But he hadn't done it for just anyone. Dozens of people had stood and watched. Only he had moved. Only he had risked the cold, the current, the chaos. They sat in silence for a few moments as the heater roared. "So, Elle," Malik said finally, "what were you doing out here? Touristing or something else?" She hesitated, trying to feel human again. He raised an eyebrow. "Heavy answer. I've had a lot of noise in my life lately. I wanted to quiet it down for a bit. Think." "I get that," he said. "Sometimes life doesn't leave enough space to breathe." Malik reached for the glove compartment and pulled out a granola bar. Eat something. Shock can hit later if you're not careful. She took the bar and ate slowly. Her stomach flipped. Not from fear anymore, but from something else. Something warm. No one had cared for her like this in years. Not without a motive, not without expecting something in return. He turned to face her. You got someone I should call? Family, partner, roommate? She shook her head. No, no one right now. All right, then you're stuck with me until I know you're safe. She gave a half laugh. That's either very sweet or very alarming. Let's call it sweet and honest, he grinned. Outside, the ambulance pulled up. Paramedics checked her vitals and confirmed what Malik had already guessed. No broken bones, just minor shock. Go home, rest. Monitor your breathing overnight, they instructed. Malik walked her up the steps to a small brownstone apartment nearby. It was a unit she'd rented under an alias 3 weeks ago. No one knew she lived there. Not her board, not her assistant, not even her driver. Thank you again, she said softly, stopping at the door. He nodded. I was glad to help. He turned to go, but she caught his wrist. Would you want to come up for coffee? I owe you that much. He hesitated, then smiled. A real, warm, not trying to impress you smile. Yeah, he said, I'd like that. And just like that, the walls she had built around her name, her identity, her life, cracked. She had no idea that the man standing before her would not only rescue her from drowning, but from the life she'd grown exhausted living. The apartment was small, almost comically modest for someone who had a penthouse on the Upper East Side. Celeste, L, she reminded herself, had chosen it for that reason. A fold-out couch, a tiny kitchenette, a bathroom with a flickering light that reminded her she wasn't in her usual world anymore. The walls were bare except for a single photo of her and her grandmother, taken when she was 21, right before her first big investor pitch. It was the only thing from her real life she allowed in that space. Malik sat at the tiny round table by the window, cradling a chipped mug filled with cheap instant coffee. He didn't complain, didn't look around the place with judgment. In fact, he seemed at ease, like he'd sat at tables like this 1,000 times before, which she realized he probably had. Across from him, Ella watched him carefully. Even now, with damp jeans and mussed-up hair, he carried a quiet confidence that filled the room more than any suit or luxury watch ever could. He asked about her day, about the neighborhood, about her favorite bagel place nearby. She answered vaguely, carefully. She didn't want to lie, but she couldn't afford to tell the whole truth. What about you? She asked finally, leaning forward, fingers curled around her own mug. Besides jumping into rivers and handing out granola bars, what do you do? He chuckled. Malik Jordan, founder and forever CEO of MJ Build and Restore, specializing in residential renovations, commercial restorations, and all things old and falling apart. You restore buildings, churches, brownstones, libraries, stuff people gave up on. I like turning forgotten into beautiful again. Something about that hit her in the chest. Do you always run into rivers for strangers? She asked, half joking. He shook his head. Not always. But my dad, he was a firefighter, said if you see someone drowning, you don't call for help. You be the help. That sounds like him. Malik tilted his head. Like who? Like someone who raised a man like you. He smiled at that, a small, grateful thing. Thanks. He passed a few years ago. Heart attack. Just me, my mom, and my little sister now. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it. Thanks. What about you? She paused. Only child. Parents gone. Raised by my grandmother. She passed a few years ago, too. That's tough. It is, she admitted. She was everything. He nodded, then asked gently, so what do you do, Elle? She hesitated. She'd rehearsed this. Used to work in tech, strategy, marketing, corporate burnout. I quit last month, trying to figure out what's next. He didn't probe, just nodded like he understood. Burnout's real. She felt her shoulders relax. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't suspicious. He wasn't Googling her name or asking how someone who looked and spoke like her ended up in a tiny apartment in Harlem. Can I ask something? He said after a moment. Sure. You're different. Most people I meet in this city are either rushing somewhere or trying to impress somebody. But you're just here. quiet, not trying too hard. Elle laughed softly. That's a compliment? The highest kind. She tucked her legs under her on the couch, sipping her coffee. I think I got tired of performing. For who? For everyone. Investors, board members, even friends. It gets exhausting when everyone sees you as something transactional. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I get that. They talked for over 2 hours, about nothing and everything. Favorite pizza spots, the best subway line to take after 10 p.m., why Harlem's community gardens were better than Central Park. Elle couldn't remember the last time a conversation felt this easy. When Malik finally stood to leave, she felt a pang she didn't expect. He pulled out his phone. Can I get your number? Just to check in tomorrow. Make sure you didn't catch pneumonia or anything. She hesitated, then gave him the number for the second phone, the one registered under her alias. I'd like that, she said softly. At the door, he paused. Listen, this might sound crazy, but would you want to have dinner sometime? Not as a thank you, just dinner with me. Her heart jumped. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Someone who liked her for who she was now, not who the world expected her to be. Yes, she said, I'd like that very much. 3 days later, he picked her up in his truck, the same old black Dodge Ram. She wore jeans and a thrifted blouse. No designer shoes, no bodyguards trailing, no headlines written. I hope you're into soul food, he said, grinning as he drove. There's this place in Queens my mom swears by. They went to a tiny hole in the wall with foggy windows and cornbread that melted in your mouth. The kind of place Celeste Langston never would have been photographed entering. But Elle, she loved it. Malik told her stories about clients who insisted on pink marble countertops, a raccoon that had broken into one of his renovation sites, and a kid from the block who kept offering to be his intern if he could pay in pizza. She told him half-truths, that she'd studied tech but left the industry, that she was reevaluating what mattered, that she was tired of a life that didn't feel like hers. She left out the billion-dollar empire, the multiple homes, the magazine covers, the headlines that called her the Iron Queen of Innovation. But with him, she could breathe. For the first time in years, she could laugh without filtering every word. Malik listened when she spoke, really listened. Not like men at networking events who only waited for their turn to speak. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered details. He noticed when she hesitated and changed the subject with grace. You're not like anyone I've ever met, he said as they walked down by the East River after dinner. Is that a good thing? He took her hand. It's the best thing. She stared at their intertwined fingers. Calloused, warm, real. For a moment, she forgot about her second life. Forgot about the empire waiting for her on Monday morning. Forgot about the weight she carried every single day. For the first time, she didn't feel like a CEO pretending to be normal. She felt like Elle, and she didn't want the night to end. Over the next 3 weeks, Elle and Malik slipped into a rhythm neither of them expected, but both quietly craved. Every evening that didn't end in a business firestorm on her real phone, Celeste, Elle, would sneak away from her executive life and reappear in Malik's world as a woman rediscovering simplicity. There were no private chefs, no black cars, no red carpet galas, just soul food takeout, walks through Prospect Park, spontaneous dance sessions in the kitchen, and Malik's terrible attempts at baking banana bread. He wasn't perfect. He sometimes forgot to text back. He was stubborn when she offered to help fix his faulty water heater, and his truck always smelled faintly of sawdust and old takeout. But he was real, and she was falling for that reality, harder than she ever intended. The problem was, so was he. Malik introduced her to more of his life. His best friend Darius, a fast-talking beat cop with sharp instincts and a protective streak, took one look at Elle and said, You're not from around here, are you? I moved to New York for work, Elle answered casually, keeping her voice even. What kind of work? He asked. She hesitated. Corporate stuff. Boring. Darius squinted, unconvinced. Right. Malik waved him off. Don't mind him. He's suspicious of everyone. It's the cop in him. But Elle saw it, the first crack. Someone outside their bubble saw that her cover story didn't quite add up. And as Malik grew more open, more vulnerable, Elle's guilt bloomed like a bruise under her ribs. He invited her to meet his mother. Diane Jordan was a retired nurse who'd raised two kids on a single income and whose warm smile could disarm a room. Her apartment was filled with family photos, crocheted blankets, and the smell of apple pie. "She's nervous," Malik whispered as they stepped into the modest living room. "Don't take it personally." "I'm more nervous than she is," Elle whispered back. Dinner was roasted chicken, collard greens, and rice with gravy. Diane asked careful questions about Elle's background, her family, her career. Elle kept her lies as close to the truth as possible. Parents gone, raised by her grandmother, burned out from tech and looking for a new path. Diane nodded politely, but Elle felt the woman's eyes lingering, studying, measuring. After dinner, Diane pulled Malik aside in the kitchen. "She's lovely," Diane said, "but she's hiding something." Malik blinked. "You don't even know her." "I don't need to. Women like her with poise like that, with eyes that have seen too much, they don't just stumble into Harlem coffee shops. Be careful, baby. I don't want your heart broken." "I love her, Ma." Diane softened. "Then ask her who she really is before it's too late." Back in her downtown office that Monday, Celeste Langston stood in front of the boardroom wall-to-wall glass window overlooking Manhattan. Her assistant Harper stood beside her, reading through a file. "The acquisition in Greenpoint is complete. You're scheduled to visit the new AI lab next Thursday, and the city council just approved the rezoning of the South Bronx property." Celeste didn't respond. "Something wrong?" Harper asked. "I want the South Bronx development paused." Harper blinked. "What?" "We're mid-contract. The projections—" "I know the projections. Pause it anyway. I want a full community impact report before we lay one brick." Harper was silent for a beat, then nodded. "Understood." Celeste turned from the window. "And Harper, I need your discretion." Harper tilted her head. "About what?" But Celeste was already walking away. Later that evening, Elle sat on Malik's couch, watching him fix a cabinet door that had unhinged after a poorly timed slam. His movements were practiced, confident. He was in his element. She wanted to freeze the moment, bottle it, stay there forever, but secrets don't stay secret. That night, Malik left his phone charging on the kitchen counter while he took a shower. Elle's real phone buzzed in her purse, the one she always kept on silent. Without thinking, she pulled it out to mute the vibration and found a flurry of messages. "Sterling Tech PR team, final edit of your Forbes op-ed is ready for approval. CNBC request, confirm your appearance for Tech and Equity panel. Harper, reminder. Bloomberg wants a quote on the acquisition freeze." She stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. The entire world she was pretending didn't exist was clawing its way back in. The bathroom door creaked. She shoved the phone away. Malik stepped out with a towel around his waist, humming off-key. "Tomorrow, I was thinking we could take the ferry to Governor's Island. It's kind of cheesy, but..." He paused when he saw her expression. "You okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." That night, as he fell asleep next to her, Elle lay wide awake, her heart pounding. She couldn't keep this up. Every time he looked at her like she was his whole world, the guilt crushed her like a wave. The truth came out 2 days later. She didn't mean for it to happen. She was late to their coffee date, stuck on a video call with European investors. She arrived at the cafe breathless, but he wasn't there. 10 minutes passed. 20. Then she spotted him. Across the street, standing frozen, staring at a newsstand. She followed his gaze. There on the cover of Forbes was a photo of her, in a crisp white suit, arms crossed, chin raised. The headline screamed, "Celeste Langston, rewriting the rules of tech power." She wanted to disappear. Malik turned slowly. Their eyes met. "Elle?" His voice was hoarse. "Malik, you're Celeste Langston." It wasn't a question. She stepped toward him, trembling. "I wanted to tell you. I was going to tell you. I swear." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You lied to me. For weeks. I needed to know if someone could love me for me. Not for the billions. Not for the title. So you pretended to be someone else?" "I didn't pretend to feel what I felt. Everything between us was real." "Lana, but you weren't." The words hung like smoke. He shook his head, backing away. "You used me." "No," she whispered. "You saved me." But Malik was already walking. She didn't chase him. 3 days passed without a single word. Not a call, not a text. Malik's name was still in her phone, his last message. "See you soon," staring back at her like a ghost. Celeste sat at her desk in the glass tower of Langston Dynamics, surrounded by silent assistants and executives, buzzing like flies around her. But she felt empty. Meetings came and went. People pitched million-dollar ventures. The stock price jumped after her op-ed went viral. And yet, all she could think about was how his eyes looked when he realized the woman he loved didn't exist, at least not the version he thought. Bethany, her longtime COO and closest confidant, finally spoke up during their post-earnings review meeting. "What's wrong?" Celeste looked up. "What? You're off. You haven't said a word since that investor Q&A. You keep checking your phone, and I know you're not waiting for a market alert. So what's going on?" Celeste stared at the glass of water in front of her. "I lied to someone," she said quietly. Bethany raised an eyebrow. "You? That's new." Celeste gave a humorless laugh. "I wanted to be seen for who I am, not the version the media built. So I used a fake name, a fake apartment, a second phone. I met someone. He saved me when I fell into the river, literally pulled me out. And then I lied. For weeks." Bethany didn't speak for a moment. Then she said, "You've always built things by controlling every variable. The stock, the narrative, even the people. But love's not a brand, Celeste. You can't pitch it into existence." Celeste stared at her. "I know." Bethany leaned forward. "Then what are you going to do?" She didn't answer. Not yet. That night she went back to the Riverwalk, the same spot where she fell, where he jumped in without thinking, where something had started that neither of them could explain. And for the first time in years, she cried. Not the elegant, silent tears of a Fortune 500 CEO, but the ugly, gut-wrenching sobs of a woman who had everything, except the one thing that mattered. Love. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, Malik Jordan was on the roof of a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, hammering in the final slate tile of a roof restoration. It was cloudy, windy. A storm was coming. Fitting. He barely heard his phone ring over the wind. It was Darius. "Bro, turn on the TV." "What?" "Just do it. Channel 4. Malik climbed down, confused. One of his crew had a battery-powered TV in the work van. He turned the knob and froze. There she was, Celeste Langston, live, in front of a podium. No makeup, no designer dress, no stylist perfect hair, just jeans, a blazer, and a microphone. "I want to speak to one person," she said. "Malik Jordan," the reporters murmured. Celeste's voice didn't waver. "You saved my life. Twice. Once in the river, and once when you showed me what it means to be truly seen. I lied to you. I pretended to be someone else because I didn't believe anyone could love the real me. Not Celeste Langston, not the CEO, not the girl who built an empire, but forgot what love was supposed to feel like." Malik stared, stunned. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry. But if you're watching, please come back to the river. One more time." The screen cut out. The crew stared at Malik. "You're just gonna stand there?" one of them asked. Malik dropped the hammer. An hour later, Celeste stood alone at the same spot where it all began. The wind was stronger now. Leaves flew past her. She didn't know if he'd come. She had no control anymore. And then, footsteps. She turned. He was there. Jeans, work boots, hoodie, heart in his eyes. "I saw you," Malik said. She swallowed hard. "I didn't know how else to reach you." "You used a press conference?" She smiled sheepishly. "Old habits." Silence. Then, "Why didn't you just tell me?" he asked. "I was scared," she whispered, "that the moment you knew who I was, it would change everything." "It did." She looked down. "But not how you think," he added. She looked up again. Malik stepped closer. "I was mad, hurt, angry that you lied. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I've been lying too." She blinked. "What do you mean?" I've always told myself I didn't belong in certain rooms, that people like you and I don't belong together, that I'm just a guy with tools and calloused hands and you're everything else. But I was wrong too. I made it about money, about class. But the truth is, I love you. The real you. All of you. She took a shaky breath. And I love you. He smiled softly. Good. She stepped into him, and he wrapped his arms around her. The city blurred behind them. The water shimmered beneath. The wind rushed past, but in that moment, the world stood still. I'll never lie to you again, she whispered. Then let's build something honest, he replied. Together. 1 year later, a quiet wedding took place in a restored Harlem church. The same church Malik's company had spent months repairing. The same one Celeste had anonymously funded to save its stained glass windows. Only now her name was on the donor plaque. Right next to his, Darius was Malik's best man. Diane beamed as she walked her son down the aisle. Bethany, surprisingly, stood as Celeste's matron of honor. The guest list was half tech tycoons, half construction workers. No assigned seating, no VIP tables. Just people. Real people. The vows were simple. I promise to see you. I promise to build with you. I promise to never be anyone else but who I am. Their kiss sealed a promise that went far beyond wealth or class. And later, as the reception lit up with laughter and dancing, Malik pulled Celeste onto the sidewalk outside. The river wasn't far. He took her hand and said, "Let's go back." "To the beginning?" she asked, smiling. "No," he said, pulling her close. "To everything after that." They stood at the same spot, the same railing. Only this time, they weren't strangers. They were everything.